Coming into the conceptual setting of everything attractions, we have to really start to identify yourself, although it's already existing in the 4 lines graphs of the simulation, right? Panel screens are 3 centers above, 3 centers below, and the lines of screen adaptations, right? Open channels going this way in travel, open line channels going this way in travel communications, all through dimension of space and time. Now, you're the center operation lines of sequence. I'm on live right now. Set an operation line screen adaptation of service interactions is knowing how to identify yourself, your own demographics, how you see yourself in the simulation. Okay, so you have to stand your platforms. Now, understanding screen adaptation is 4 signals that grounds the surface and travel. It's an open window, right? See it in all different angles in travel communications. Okay, different demographics of you, right? So it's all about understanding how to operate the system. The mind conceptual setting is knowing how to see it through a window, how to see it through a mirror, how a mirror sees you from outside. It doesn't see you from outside. To get from outside, it gets to its inside. So how a phone sees you, it sees the outside of you. Then it starts to see the inside of you. So it's the opposite direct signals that set position all levels of traffic and inventory settings and set in traffic communications. But for you to understand the demographics of you is understanding how to see it in all levels of your coordinates and your streaming, right? All 4 angles and setting and sequence lines of panel. Processing that in position locations, you come to its box frames of window frames. Okay? And then you come into its dimensional doors in setting and sequence. It's that position, right? So it does really come more Doctor Strange, right? It's to understand how to communicate to myself inside and travel. So once you get into that, then you come into the triangulation, which is your pyramid. Look at that, disappeared. Not ready to see the frequency. Let me do it again. There's the triangle, all right? And then you have to understand the center operation of your system and set positions of point lines of calculations, right? And then once you get into that, okay, you come into the ground lines of settings and set lines of circuits. Then you come to the upline centers in location system interactions. There's you and the Merkaba inside, right? So you got grounds, you got your powers, and you got your atmospheres, and you got your highways and travel. All through platforms of communication, setting, and calculation. Okay? And then you energize yourself. And you teleport here, and you're at the top now. You're vortexed on top of the platform interaction. Okay? Hola, ¿cómo estás? So once you understand that you're always in the simulation, you just have to understand how to vortex, timeline, time jump, time stream, line settings, high travel in the communication system of the calculation part of acceleration setting. Then you can basically put yourself back in set position, and you can change the correlation lines of time and measure and scale into a part acceleration setting of space and time. Your part accelerator. Once you get into the part acceleration system, then you can travel to all different lines of space in all communication setting, all through traction. All right? All through face recognition. All through time frame recognition of time settings. All through communication, right? Platform here, platform here, platform here, right? So, but you have to understand you in perspective. I love perspective. Everything you do is not a coincidence. It's a reason why you have that. Okay, you take what you're yours, which is essential. You disregard what you don't want in that position, right? So understanding how this all works, guys, is truly understand that everything you have, you need in the simulation. It's just understanding how to process it throughout this operation, right? How to see yourself through a box frame. But you're always in the center. You never leave the center, right? So, for example, you're here, right? Okay, so you're here in the settings. It's a travel, okay? Now, you're looking this angle, outside, right? So, for you to understand that, the actual structure of the box frame, right, which is the triangulation frame, the setting, all that goes in its directions all at once, all right? So, what happens is the particle streams of the box frames mutates in lines of travels of communication, right? So in that position, so the wall you're seeing is on this angle now, travel. It gets more complicated, right? So all you're doing is you're taking stuff out of box frame, triangulation to triangulation box frame, which is basically, if I'm here and I want to look here, the wall goes with me. The wall goes with me. And the faster you go, the more you go into circulation rotation. But here's the thing, you're the center operation that never leaves. You're the pivotal point. You're the circuit. You're the center. You're the operation. You're part of acceleration setting that never leaves. Okay? You have an axle. You have a wheel. You have a coil. You have a transistor. You have a resistor. You have a satellite. You have an antenna. You have a modem, Wi-Fi, satellites, and towers of communications, right? You're a storage unit. That's what your body is. But you never, ever, ever leave the center of operation. It's the mind that does everything, in sentence. And the brain does all levels of the conversion, bringing in the vision of cortex locations. That's what puts the pieces and puzzles together through your demographics and how you see yourself, through your schematics, through your primers. Okay? So it's very powerful when you come in that positions. So when you energize, this is how it works. Again, set lines and settings. You're starting to energize, and this is you. Your body is energizing, okay, with the wall. Okay, so this is you. Start with that set locations, all right? Electrical lights, electrical panels, electrical in positions, all right? That's you energizing, right? So you're setting position and you're looking this directions, right? But the wall was like this, right? The wall was like that, right? So now you go with the flow of its continuous flow, right? So you go within that direction in settings, in that direction, around the system in circulation of rotation, okay? So the actual you and you, which is the wall, you work together. You blend into each other and you come back to the center of operation of you, which is your operator, back where you are in your simulation. So the wall converts the particles and accelerations of space and time, converts the system back in its pixelation of its hologram, and center communication setting is part of acceleration of time, real-time scale, real-time measure, existing and evolving, and everything happening all at once in travel communications. But you neutralize your settings in all lines of part of acceleration setting. You separate, then you come back together, us in operation setting interactions. Okay? Very, very complicated stuff. Right? So to bring yourself together, you're energized, right? All particles all separating, right? All right, so once you get in that position, each line signals, sets lines of travel, has a direct line link that comes in, positions back interactions. Comes into lines at a different angle that processes the communication. Okay? So it comes back in structure, back in its design. Looking the other way. Wild, eh? All right, and then you can see it. There's the pyramid at another spectrum. Okay? Then you see another spectrum, right? You see it on 4 lines of sequence. A grounds of service. There's the ceiling and travel, right? So you can see 4 directions in once, but there's the face and recognition in the center. 4 directions in once. So now you understand when you guys want to change direction, your part of acceleration goes with you at the same time measure of the wall. So you go with the wall. So you look this way, your whole body, and the wall goes, and then and then the pixels come in, right? And then the hologram. Now you're looking this way. But everything here, nothing here. So you're creating as you go. But what you have to identify, you're already creating what you have. Okay? So you have to understand how this all works now. Knowing exactly, you're already in the simulation, you're already in transition, and you're already seeing the windows, you're already seeing the frame, you already see what's in the car. But what you have to understand to change things, of changing, of existing, and everything happening all at once, okay? You're putting things in your car, not what's already there. You guys have way too high levels of expectation to have everything. You know, a car has a steering wheel. You know, it has its interior. You know, it has its wheels. You know, it has its engine, its alternation system, and all that tracks inside the system, right? Right? But when you're looking around, there's nothing there. It's empty space. You have to create it in your mind. And the faster you go, the more you see the simulation. Okay? So, for example, when you see a road, you know you created it. That's expectation because you see it. The body sees this, the body sees that, the body sees this. When you guys go higher, there's nothing there. There's nothing there. And that's what you got to get balanced with the mind now. Okay? So once you get into that, you're bringing in the demographics, you're bringing in the mapping sequence, you're bringing in the coordinates, you're bringing in the space, you're bringing in the time, you're bringing in the particles, the accelerations, the molecules, the protons, electrons, through creating, guys. So if I'm here, it's all set up. Doing here, it's all set up. But all this is empty. So I'm creating as I go. When you're seeing things, that's just creation that you're already done. Now you have to get out of that process to come into creating. And when you're looking back, you're just seeing what you created through creations of creating. So it's much easier to see that and set position locations to your navigation system. All through transients, all through calculations. Very, very powerful self through perception. How your body goes with the part of acceleration, it turns into the wall. And then you go back and center. See, you go back and center. Back into your pixelation and set into transients. Okay? And you do the same thing, right? So you do it north, east, west, and south. Now the team's coming in north, east, west, and south wing. Okay? More width, more specifications, right? More spectacular, more formation lines, more demographics, more width, more band, more streaming, more coordinates, more pi, more volume, more mass, more acceleration, volume, velocity, and evac. Right? So that's what happens when you guys constantly are creating. What you already created is this, the actual simulation itself that you actually live in a constant existing flow of connections. Because you're already there, right? So you already created the demographics already, right? So you created this, you created this, you created this, you created that. That's a simulation. You're inside now, right? So you created this, you see this. You create this and you see this. Now you go higher, everything disappears. Right? Because it's taking you out of creation and just coming into creating. You have to understand the acceleration of the brain, how it works and lines up its own system, location, its own foundation grounds. Then you got the ceilings, all right? So you got the grounds, the panels, and the ceiling, okay? So if you look really close, you can see the 4 pyramids, right? One here, one here, one here, one here, right? And then you do this, 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 right? Okay? And you do this, you do this, you do this, you do this. You can do whatever you want and set transients. Once you understand what you're doing, it gets much easier how to simulate that. So again, you're in position, you're holding up your phone and set transients inside the simulation. Okay? Inside guys, inside. Okay, nothing's outside your system. All levels of inside setting. So you're seeing from the mirror, from outside, to the projection from inside, the intelligence, right? How intelligence sees you, how a phone sees you, or how a TV sees you. It sees your outer space and then it sees your inner space. So that's how it works with the simulation, seeing through perspective, through your demographics of your mapping system, through your navigations, through your systems, all through settings, right? So that's what's going to happen in setting when you get it. But if you look really close, you actually see the one pyramid in setting from above, looking all different angles all at once, right? 4 walls of sequence, 4 panels of communications, right? Here's the portals coming in transients. There's one portal, one clocking of Earth. Look at that, disappeared. All right, there's a clocking lines of earth and traction. Okay. Oh, it took it out in sequence. You guys have to understand the crop circles now. Set tractions. Okay? And then you have to understand the ground centers in set traction. Then you understand the ceiling of operation sequence in set tractions. 4 clocking systems, 24, 48, 72, 144. There's a 144, right? Basic grounds are the tubing lines of C line, the rotation lines of surface and tractions, direct lines of grounds, high line centers in your power generation screens. Change all communication settings. So you guys want to travel, you have to understand your solar generation screen. Your energetic screen, operation line sequence, lines of panel. Processes communication system all through travel. Okay? Your X2000. So you teleport inside line, you start navigating inside tractions. So you're at the front of the system of the cockpit in navigation. So from there to there. So you're navigating inside this portal. You go inside this portal and it teleports in 3 centers of angles. Past, present, and future all at once. Right? So your thoughts, your action, emotions are going in the same direction. They go in different directions in settings of travel. Offline signal, offline communication, inside traction. Right? Different structure, different design. So when you're in the simulation, you have to understand how to use your coordinates of longitude and latitude. Right? I'm upside down. Right? So basically this puts me in positions this way in tractions. I'm upside right. Really Dr. Stream in travel. Okay? Now I'm in position of graphical screens in lines of line communication setting in travel communications. Okay? The grounds is set tractions. Right? So I can be anywhere I want. I can be upside down. I can be upside right. I mean, it's just trying to understand the inversion, how you set lines, your mirror resolution system in the simulation through abstraction. Very, very complicated stuff. Okay? Then you can set your tubings, 3 centers of circuits, which is your line communication setting to travel. Okay? You weren't allowed to see that. I could do that again. It's traveling too fast. See, it's traveling too fast. You're not allowed to see it because you're not on balance what you're seeing. See, it's going to keep doing that until you guys get balanced with your demographics and how to communicate your system and travel. See, I keep putting it in, but it keeps leaving. It's not showing you because you don't understand your frequencies of balance. Now it is in setting. So I'm just trying to get you guys to understand what goes on when you want to teleport to different levels of space and time. You're always in the center operation. You never, ever leave the demographics of yourself. You're always in the center. You are the operator that operates everything. You're the operator inside that you already know. Now you just have to understand what operates outside, which is everything else, which is consciously aware of space. Space is void. So space doesn't come in until you understand the line settings from this angle, this angle, this angle, and this angle. So once you understand that, it all comes together in circulation rotations. Now you're starting off with box, triangulation, box. So now you're starting with the mapping sequence lines of all communication through its system, all through tractions, right? But that's where it starts off in simulation. So the team has to get understanding how to do this now. Okay? Looking at all different angles they're just creating. You're seeing the car that's already created. You're seeing the TV that's already created. That's easy to see because you have no expectation, right? No expectation because you already see it through expectation. What you guys have to identify is no expectation and expectation at the same time. That puts you in the position location of you just existing and evolving and expanding yourselves. Because the creation is what you already created. So it's kind of like this in setting, all right? You see yourself on the road, all right? This is the road, right? You already see it, so you already know what you're doing. You see the road, right? But what if the road wasn't there in traction? See, it's indicating outline signal, right? 3 lines of signal locations. Where's the center point? So it keeps disappearing in settings of travel, all right? You have to stay in control of your system in modification of your energy lines. It's all communication setting in travel communications. Road graph screens, adaptations of flux of our screen. Setting signals, lines of ground, lines of surface. Process line, process 2, process 3, process 4. Face recognition. All right? All right, so setting lines of travels, outline signal. Ground lines of surface, outline signal location, setting of travel. Very complicated stuff, right? Center course centers, directing lines of center operation, torical fields, operation, part acceleration setting to space and time. Oh yeah. Look at that, see? Very powerful stuff, right? All right, and then it travels this way on a 45 angle, setting lines of communication, right? Oh, look at that. See? Keeps disappearing because you get emotional. Nothing appears in position until you get out of emotion. You've got to get out of emotion, or you're not going to be able to travel through your vessels of communications to settings. Okay? And here's the faces of recognition. Okay? So you got a face here, you got a face here, looking that way, face in the center, face over here, and face over here, and face over here, protecting through its image of its cortex of design. Sets calculations, screen lines, adaptations, and settings, all through tractions. Look at this in calculation. Right? Another lines of visionary cortex of a structure of a primer that puts all positional case in different lines of teleportation through face recognitions. Okay? And again. Okay? So remember, you're always in the center. You're always in the center. So all you're doing is changing the angles of space and time and sending the operation of you in a box frame in a triangulation system. Okay? So it's very powerful when you understand the inner line to the outer line setting the spectrum. Your simulation, there's your Skynet. That's your sky grid. Your sky grid, okay, is outside. Your sky grid is not inside. The inside is the simulation. The outside is the outer space. That's where your sky is. But you're seeing from projection from outside space, inside of you. See, it gets very confusing if you understand the adaptations of balance of the Mandela butterfly and its system. Okay, to its tractions, all in set setting. See, you're in the center. You never leave the center. Ever. All right? So, once you understand that, then you understand the demographics of this. Look what you created through creating. Look what you did through creating. Different lines, different communications, different time, different space. Look what you did through creating. All different vision, all different cortex, all different faces. But you never, ever leave the center of operation. You're always there. That's you. Say hello to yourself, which is you. That's you. You don't leave the center. So you're controlling everything from center of operation. You go this way, everything goes this way. Right? So if you're going this way, everything goes this way. If you go this way, everything goes this way. But everything around you isn't existing yet because there's nothing there. You have to bring it in your mind now. See, that's why it's confusing. See, so you're so used to seeing this in a frame, right? You're so used to seeing a TV. Well, what if you wake up in the morning and there's nothing there? You got to bring it in. Or you're not seeing anything because you're so used to seeing everything. That's what you have to get out of. That's the coexisting. All through set position. Okay? So that's what you're doing through the walls, right? You're only seeing one angle, and then you do the same on the same angle. You can do it this way. 3 different lines of conversions of intent. One says one way, one says another way, right? So this is different perspective, how you see the particles and accelerations of time and scale. Different demographics, different structure, different design, different schematics, different image from your imaginations, guys. Okay? Look. Look. And look. Okay? So I'm trying to get you guys on where you stand. For you get that in position is the basic grounds, is basically line centers of box frame. Okay? To its triangulation inside traction. Okay? And see the conversion this way, north, west, east, and south wing. And travel. Okay? You start with that, right? Then you come into this, all right? You point the arrows of its indication. Okay? You point the arrows to its box lines of indication. All right? And then you point the arrows up and travel communication. There's your Merkaba, there's your tesseract, there's your tetrahedron, right? But you're always in the center operation of everything. That's you that never leaves the center. Oh, look at that. Disappeared. See, I disappeared. There it is, right? That never stays. That always stays in the center. So if you're changing your tent, you're going left. You change your tent, you're going right. Right? You change your operation system. You get into influence. You're influencing now. Now, when you're influencing, you're taking yourself out of intent. You set the image already that you want to look this way. But if you influence that, now you're coming in mind manipulation. You're manipulating everything demographic that turns it into a map. You're not just creating a wall. You're creating a hallway now. And when you're creating a hallway, you're creating a city. And when you create a city, you're creating planets. Okay? That's what you're doing. That's form of influence, of manipulation. It's the next level for you guys to understand. How you use that in the simulation, how to operate that is through perception. All through direction. Okay? And then you come into the outline. Right? There's your pyramid, right? There it is, interactions. There it is. Astral projections, astral travel. That's your pyramid. Okay? Those are your doors. That's your ceiling. Those are your panels. Okay? So we all understand how this all works inside and outside and travel. Right? But you never leave the center. You never leave the center at all. That's what's crazy about it. So let's see. Let's set in sequence lines of grounds and set position lines of travel. Center here, center here. Two intelligence looking in the center operation. Two intelligence looking this way, right? So you got this way in setting and this way in traction, right? And you got your brain waving pattern inside line. The brain's inside the position of itself, of its intelligence in set position. There's the brain of the intelligence. There's the brain of the intelligence. Bring it into the face set location of its size and travel. Okay? Very powerful stuff, right? Okay, and that basically puts all lines of communication setting. Then you can bring in the ears. Ears are coming in into its intelligence formations. Oh, look at that. Shit, disappeared. Oh, disappeared again. See, keeps disappearing because you keep adding emotion. Okay? That's what you have to get out of, is the emotion of everything. You can't travel through indication setting if you don't understand how to go through box triangulations, your triangulation box of travel, guys. It's very complicated. It's just basic grounds how to set yourself in a box in a triangulation frame. Okay, set an arrow indicating going this way and going this way in direction. Okay, so you direct it here in the grounds. Okay, and you do it on the same way on the other side. There's the pyramid on both sides, right? So you're indicating 3 lines of flux and downshift lines of anomaly. But if you do it this way, this is the flux and a different angle of anomaly. Different travel, different directions, different schematics. But you're always in the center point in set position. You're always in the center point, a set position. You're always in the center point, a set position. So it doesn't matter where you go, you're always inside yourself, right? So the center operation is basically how you put yourself in delusion of its image, the process of calculating how to use your telepathy winds, position the oscillations, the correlation lines of track centers, the operation calculation settings, your demographics to your map, your coordinates, your widths, the lines, position lines of pi, right? So that's one. Now my doppelgangers are coming in 5 settings of cycle, right? Versions of them be going west, east, west, and south, and north, and set lines of east, right? Me in all direction, right? Docking 1, docking 2, docking 3, docking 4, docking 5, docking 6. Set tractions, right? That's all through me, right? In set position. Okay? But you guys have to still understand how to get in state lines of all communications zoo and understand position, how to see yourself in center operation first. Through the simulation of the 4 walls in set tractions, which is your 4 pyramids. So this is pyramid 1. Okay, pyramid 2. Okay, so we got one center here. There's one pyramid. There's another pyramid. There's another pyramid. And there's another pyramid, right? So you got 4 pyramids in one setting. Okay, so you are in the center operation of you in set tractions, right? So then you come out of space in perspective, how you see lines of communication. right? And you just change it on different angles. You see the window frame on different angles of travel, right? Change the projection. Okay, getting into detail, get into your imaginations, guys. That's why you have your intuitive cycles, the 3 centers of travel. Okay, but what you're seeing is the eye line inside the simulation, right? So it's really cool, right? Because look at it, look at the angle. It's coming out of the setting. Now, if I add color to it, you actually see more coming out through pixelation graphs. Let's add red line, outline signals, and a 4-box frame line is a window frame line. Oh, look at that. You guys aren't ready for that. See, I have to do it again because you're offline settings. Now it comes out. See, just in red. See? See, now it's coming out. It's coming out. See? It's already out now. See? On different angles. It's coming out. See, this is what's on standby. So when you're doing this, all you're bringing in is illumination of its coding. You're bringing in the codification setting, you're bringing the encryptions, the algorithm that's standing out on point of illumination of its map. And everything else is just on standby, right? But you are the controlling mechanisms of what you see is all levels of you of face recognition. You in control of everything you do. And you in center operation. That's you in the center. Creating the face in the mind. That creates everything information setting, all communicates to its system. So understand you're the facades of everything in your mind that's already in the position locations. The mind itself is just creating. Okay? It's already created everything. So that's what you have to get out of expectation, everything, how you see your watch, your computers, your phones, your TVs. When you go to higher line signals, you have to bring it into your imagination now. Right? So the more you bring it into your imagination, the more you're controlling the mind itself. Because if you're seeing things, that's great. You understand what you're seeing through vision. But if you're not seeing things at a higher level, that means everything around you is controlling your vision, controlling your cortex, your mystical cortex, your primary circuits, your endorphins, your travels, your mind, your space, your operation systems, your geometric systems, okay? Your geologicals, your geographical systems, your mappings, and everything your demographical system. But you've got to get control of what you're seeing. Right? You bring it in. And you start with this interaction. Right? This is creating a new wall. So if I'm here and there's a wall already, that's expectation. But if I wake up and there's nothing there, I got to bring it in. Because if not, everything else around you will bring it in. And you identify that is not me. I didn't create that vision. That's not my intelligence. I didn't bring that in. I'm not in control of myself anymore. And that's all it's doing. That's all you got to get in control of is the conscious awareness of everything it's setting, right? So basically, it's like when that positions you're here and you're automatically seeing everything outside that's already set up for you. That's creation. But how was it created? How was it created? Pixelation through hologram. And it's all through settings, how you come into that position, all through demographics. How the particle acceleration goes with the directions of your system. Circulation rotations, right? Circulation is this way, all right? Rotation is this way in tractions. Circulation rotations, right? So you're constantly changing your Merkaba and tesseract in different directions all at once of travel, all right? So you have to truly understand how to work with that, and then you come into all position location and settings, all through traction. Different angles, different graphs, different communications, right? But you're always in the center operations in your box frame, which is your window, right? Once you're standing window, then you can change the demographics of your platforms, right? You can change it on different angles and set traction, see? Different image, right? Change it again. Different image, different angle, right? So you never leave the center operation of you. You have to understand the outer spectrum to understand the inner spectrum of travel and set tractions. There's the intelligence inside, see? There's the eyes, there's the nose, there's the mouth. That's controlling the whole structure of the design. So nothing can penetrate inside your plasmazine walls, which is your fields, guys. Okay? Nothing can come in because you're always showing a face. And that's what it is. You don't show your face. It's like you're not identifying whose car is it. Oh, it's somebody's car. Okay, so might as well just take it. And that's what you're doing if you're not putting your face in setting, right? So it gets very easy once you understand that you're already in the simulation. But you have to understand the 4-wall sequence, same lines of travel, okay? And then once you get into that, then you come into delta heading. You start with the grounds, all right? Start with the 3 centers of travel, all right? And then you come into the location grid, okay? And then you come into its door, okay? And then you get to expand the door in volume, okay? So when you expand the door, you can multiply the door and set travel, okay? You can put in a higher lines of sequence, a higher lines of communication lines of travel, but you have to understand how to use yourself in simulation first, okay? And then you come into this level, outline signals, outline screen adaptations. There's the city, all right? See how that's set up in location grid? Now, if I change the setting, now you come into the road, which is this graph, which is this runway. Okay? All right, and then you basically see a car come in this way. Here's a car in that setting. All right? And then you see another car in that position going this way in system, right? So a car going this direction and a car going this direction. Okay? So it's very powerful when you connect higher lines of sequence of the highway, right? So when you guys go higher, you don't see anything. You have to bring it in, or everything else will bring it in for you. You understand? So this is about you thinking about understanding how to use your simulation of thinking and understanding how to get in position of processing, of just creating, not what you're seeing through creation. You're already in simulation. You just have to understand the window frames and set tractions. All through box frames, all through track communications, all through directions. Okay? And then you go in this. There's the panels of the doors. Okay? Different angles. See? Door here. Got a door here. And set lines of traction. Okay? There you go again. There's the ceiling going up. Right? So you're seeing the perspective and so many different angles of communication system all through travel. Okay, it gets very complicated through the mind lines and the eye line sequence, all right? All right, let's start with that setting and that communication of its doors. And then we go outline. Now this is all line inline, okay? So this is 2/3 off graph, right? So this is a provisional location which puts you into your 12 o'clock incentive nebula. But you want to, oh, look at that, 2 left, see? 2's gone, right? So I got to put it back in tractions. Okay? There's a reason I'm getting you guys to understand these things. So the higher you go, your whole map disappears. It has to. This is how you start controlling your mind of what you're already created in space. If you're in that position, you understand what you did through your formula and equations, to your algorithms, and how to set it up through encryptions, how to set up new coding, how to set up new formula, how to travel through Votronics in a different level, different frequency, different time, different measure, different scale. But what doesn't change is real time, existing and everything happening all at once. So it's a constant, continuous flow that you have to come into position in all lines of settings. Because everything you see around you is already created in the mind of perception through its inception. That puts everything in cases and set interactions through your conception inside your system or your simulations. And it's all done through simulation thinking. How you communicate your thoughts, your actions, and your emotions to your simulator that creates a map of all lines of all communication setting and conception. All right, so now we're going to go through the demographics outside the setting of outer space of doors, right? So we setting sequence here, setting lines of travel, direct lines of grounds. There's door recognition 1, door recognition 2, and setting of travel. And door recognition 3 is set travel and communications. Okay, so you're going outside now, out space of the doors, right? So your whole spectrum of light changes travel, and it changes directions in your system through your beddings. There's your meta beds, right? Setting lines of travel in point lines of graph, all right? So there's your meta beds, right? Very powerful stuff in traction. Okay, you see how it changes everything in setting? Look, everything changed. Look, it's amazing. Isn't that incredible how you see it on different angles? But you got to see in a 4 angle all at once, right? Very powerful stuff, right? And so what makes it more powerful is you're overlapping the box frames, okay, in set position, okay? So you're inside looking outside of inside interaction, all through window, all through frame. Okay, so it gets more complicated how the brain converts a system in its dimensional door. There's a door inside now in set interactions. Okay? Very complicated through the eye line, all through perspective. Okay, guys? All right, so perspective drawing is a basic 4-line sequence, 4 ground centers with 3 lines of measure and 4 lines of scale of question. This has a direct line link, how you process lines of box frames in a triangulation system as center. Okay? So the basic is understanding the grounds, the panels. Okay, and this is your primer, inside and outside now. So you're working outside, the provision. Setting 1, setting 2, right? Now you're in volume. Okay, you're going into higher lines of communication of space. So you're going into delta heading. You're going into different directions of travel. Okay, you're going into different directions of travel. Okay, all right, and then you can go this way and travel. Change the pyramid of travel communications, right? Directions. Look what you see in sequence, the dimensional doors. All right, all through a box, and here is a door to go through interaction. Okay, now once you get in that provision, it comes this way, and it comes this way in travel. Look at that. Pretty wild stuff, right? All through a dimensional door. So you see lines of sequence in position of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 doors in sequence of travel on different sides. One that side, one that side. Now we change the angle. Look what you see in traction. Okay? It's really, really powerful stuff when you start connecting what's going on with your system, because you already see yourself in the simulation. You just have to understand the map, how it sets lines of communication inside tractions of you, inside and outside through all as a thermo and X-ray. So you always see from inside and outside, outside and in. But when you're inside, you're looking outside, and outside is looking inside. So when anything is looking at you, okay, it's looking at your outside from inside. So when you're looking at everything from, you're already inside, that's the center. That's the thing. So when you're holding your phone, you're inside the simulation. Okay, so you don't need to angle anything. You're doing it in the mind now, conception of 100% time. 100% measure, 100% scale. That process vast volume velocity to evax line screen adaptation of the flux. That puts every location as a bounce. So you got 100% lines in percentage over screen, okay, in the capacity of the brain, okay? That's the ground centers of surface and traction, right? And then you got 100% line settings, okay, in the power generation setting and track correlation system interactions, right? Which is your 4, your solar generator, right? And then you get a high sequence lines, which is your atmospheres, right? Grounds, powers, and the atmospheres, 100%. Start with 100% lines in position of your brain capacity, lines of volume. Sets calculation setting equals lines of triangulation. 100% location has to be the box because it's the frame. And the position 100% location is the down sequence of the travel. Okay, so it's got to be this way, that way. That's how it comes together, right? So you're 100% in the atmospheres, triangulation lines of flux. Then you have the flux that comes into position location setting. Flux capacitor. Flux capacitor inside track core centers location of its box. Flux capacitor. Then you have the flux capacitor, but it upshifts lines of communication setting to travel. Arrows of indication setting to travel communication of its flux, right? So you put the position lines of its question here, top line signal, and question here on the bottom line. The set tractions and set calculations, right? Question above, question below, right? The equal line is 100% of its platform. That indicates a system of engineers location of travel, right? So the platform comes in equal line course centers, there's solar generation screen that changes the time measure and scales, the clock and system location and setting. Okay? Then you come into the platforms of communications. All right? But you got to be 100% ground line, 100% power line, and 100% atmosphere. And once you get in the atmospheres, then you come in your magnetic highway and set positions. Okay? All right, so when you get in lines of sequence, you have a tubing screen, adaptation of settings from Earth to space. Okay, and then you have a tubing system, line centers from Earth, which is sonar echo, which is your 4 clocking centers of travel in your crop circles of set position, all through traction, all through locations, right? So I'm constantly changing the vision, the cortex, the primer, okay, in position of its crop circle, changing lines of directions all through tractions, right? This is what you do through a crop circle in travel. Okay, there's a crop circle on the grounds, right? That's connected high centers of sonar and 3 signals of ground communications, right? Directing lines, left over right, right over left. 3 lines of angles in travel and then communications, right? All right, so we change position. Now your test is basically creating the crop circles in all setting. Okay, now you communicate to setting lines of travel. You have a direct line link position. This is your mapping sequence. And then you come into high course centers, which is high information setting, which is the cloud. The cloud is above the highways in modification setting your tractions. All the calculations. Center cloud, E-cloud, line communication lines. Okay, and set tractions. Okay, very, very complicated stuff, but a lot of fun when you get a true understanding, right? And you can see it in all different angles, right? Inside set position. All right, guys? So that's how it sets up all the time in sequence lines of grounds. You got to get 100% of the grounds, 100% of the powers, 100% of the atmospheres. That puts lines of position of ground lines of 3, ground lines of 3, and ground lines of 3. Grounds, powers, and atmospheres. 3, 3, 3, right? Setting lines of 3 equals lines of 4. Okay? Set lines of 3 equals lines of 4. Set lines of 3 equals lines of 4. Okay? You know, you're directing and redirecting, right? Then you course lines of channels and direct location lines of setting. The process indicates in setting. You use the brain convergence, comes in all lines of wave and cycle, right? So you get an alpha tone, overcross the demographics, and your Schumann resonance and travel. Okay? And you change the time measure and scale and set positions. Comes in line screen adaptations of pi, 3 lines of center, 2 lines of spectrum, 360 over set track locations. Pi generation lines of crop circles of 1, half line signal lines of 2, and half line rotations of 1 centered lines of travel. Okay, sets the spectrum lights of communications. And then we come into phase facades and travel. Okay? Well, look at that. I gotta do it again. Set lines of communications. Frequencies that go too high. All right, so what you're doing is you come into the capillaries. The capillaries are the line course centers that's connected to settings. The process communicates in setting the tone lines into waving screen lines of proxy channels, directing lines of data, formation lines of 3 ground grids, and line communication of window frames and traction. Sets calculation ground centers in line communication setting road graph screens, right? Offline signal and line rotations, window frames, and line screen adaptations of settings. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 lines of communication of dimensional doors. Sets calculation screen lines adaptation setting to high lines of flux over screen. High signals, ground centers of surface and traction, right? So your formula gets a lot more complicated when you're inside line communication. Okay? Very complicated stuff all through travel. Okay? And then you come to your traffic and your inventory. Okay? Point charter markers has a direct line link that how you process your systems, lines of communication, setting, puts everything all together in traction, right? But you have to understand the demographics of yourself first and position of box and triangulation frame, inside and outside of everything, right? So it's very basic understanding your indications, setting your 4 L's, okay? Setting lines of communications, right? Setting here, right? Start with that, right? Now you go from here and you go from here, all right? And then you go from here and then you go from here, right? There's your pyramid, right? And you do the same demographics, but you need equal line settings to set position. Go from here, and center in traction, right? All right, so when you get into that position location of the system, it gets a lot more easier how you come into that. So the equal line setting is the center course centers of its platform. It center ops everything, right? Which is connected to its flywheel. That's connected to its polarity inside travel. Okay? Now when it's connected to its polarity inside travel, it creates a set position, all levels of part acceleration. Okay? So it creates a setting of all levels of travels and direct signals that grounds the surface and traction. Okay? And then you put the energetic dome. There's your vessel of communication. okay? So you see the indications above now, right? And 4 signals in travel through an XT1000, right? And you see the lights come in, right? See the lights come in at different levels at different angles, all through track locations. All right, and then you change it around. Okay, there's a crop circle. Okay, so your center graph, your center line communication, this is the overlying centers. I see above and see below. That's a crop circle, right? So the crop circle connects to the growth hands. Setting lines are 50,000 feet below the earth. Processing communication lines is setting, process line is circulation system and travel. Okay? So the crop circle has 3 indicators into positions all over that creates its pyramid in set traction. Here's the holographic setting. So that's what crop circles do. Okay? They create the map of a hologram. Okay? So the higher lines of pyramid. There's a pyramid in setting, all created through a crop circle. Oh, the line signals off. See? There's a dimensional solar sail. So when you plant a crop circle on the earth line, it's connected to your eye line. This is your eye. Living in all line centers, 3 circuits, lines, and screens. Adaptation is a force inside, but you can also go outside lines in position of perimeters and parameters and setting attractions. So your eye's looking this way now, looking up, and there's your pyramid in demographics. Then you come into your primer circuits, and you add 3 signals up in line position: cosmic flame, cosmic fire, and serpent flame. 3 indicate in setting in travel communications. 4 signals and grounds the surface. Okay? So when you're creating that, it's now on its grounds as set tractions. Okay? It's very powerful stuff when you start to indicate what you're doing in set position lines of travel, guys. Okay? And then you shield it around in set position to its operation. Very complicated, it's very powerful stuff. But then you get in the demographics and you truly stand, you created 2 solar sails locations to its setting through a crop circle. So you see it in 3 different directions, right? Solar sail here, here, and here in center. So and then basically how you see the eye line, right? The eye is here in set position, right? So it's very interesting too, because it's done from all inside the eye. See, that's what the tricky part is. It's all inside the eye itself. So you're never outside the eye line. So you're always in the simulation. So you're always inside the eye. But all the activity happens inside, into your box, into your window frames and travel. Okay? And then you change the demographics, see? Of the eye setting, of the eye sequence seeing this way now, right? And the eye seeing this way. It's setting attractions. So the eye seeing this way, and it's seeing this way. So it's setting lines of 4 sequence, lines of 5 panels, and screen adaptations of flux. Or it sees lines of indicates lines of 2 lines of angles. Remember, it's all inside the eye line. Nothing comes out of the eye itself. And it travels its communicates setting all through traction. There's the pyramid in setting. All right? But if you look really close, you can actually see the face. It's that traction's inside traction. All right? All through calculations. There's the intelligence inside, controlling everything in the eye setting, outside. All through, it sets communication of its crop circle. Okay? All different angles, but now you understand what a crop circle is. From above, below. Right? So, you got 3 center units, process of 1, process of 2, process of 3, and process of 4 in set position. Attractions. Very powerful stuff inside track correlations. Right? And you can see it in all different platforms of communication. Right? So I'm just showing you how you have to really understand how to do this in your formula equations, right? Because it gets more complicated. So the higher you go, the more you see out of expectation, how you see things. You got to bring it in now, okay? Because everything will disappear. When everything disappears, that's where you're supposed to be. That's where you've always been. It's just the existing itself that puts everything all together in traffic communications, okay? All right, so setting lines and screen adaptations is setting the box frames. Let's change the travels. Okay, just in a 4-line position. Box frame, right? Okay, and that's got outside line center, line condition setting of the triangle. Okay, so it's overlapping the sequence lines of communication. All right? And you change the angle. Okay? and an equal here, sending travel of communication. Right? So it's always ways to seeing things inside and outside at the same time, guys. Right? So you've seen the above surface, below the surface, around the surface, in that position location through setting, all through traction. Right? But that's what it is in position locations. Right? And it's all inside the eye. It's all happening from inside the eye. Platforms of indication settings. Okay? Platforms in line set location system and down cross location settings. Okay? Change it. Your eye's in a different direction now. Right? So it's set position location here. Let's change the pyramid in travel communication setting of floor mounts and travel, directing ground centers to surface. Okay? And remember, you're always in the set lines of communication inside the traction. Oh, look at that, disappeared. Okay? So that's you, right? So you just, that's you in structure, right? So, and then your eye is this. This is your eye. Looking at everything inside the eye of itself, which is more complicated. Then you come into platforms outside setting of space lines of anomaly. Then you get into position of seed potting, and your direct settings, of course, centers your alpha, delta, theta of communication setting and travel, right? And then you come in position location, your panels, and setting attractions of face recognitions. Then you get timeline sequence, high lines of ground centers of surface and travel. Okay, inside line position to you, inside traction. That's you. That never leaves the center. Okay? To understand the operation system, guys, is to understand that if I'm the box, I don't become the box until I understand I'm in the center of the box. And once I understand that, then I come inside and outside the box. Inside, outside the box. Okay, and then you come into expansion. Through creating. Okay, through creating, guys. See how it forms its shape? Okay, and then you change the angle. And then you change the angle. Okay, and then you change the angle again, right? So you're creating, right? So you're creating this, you're creating this, you're creating this, you're creating this. Okay? And you change the angle. So you're always seeing 4 angles all in one. You're always seeing 6 angles all in one. And everything you're line signaling, you're going into the past, the present, and future. So past, present, and future. Okay? You're always in the present. Okay? Present of center of operation. Okay? Past of operation and 2 settings of signals. Okay? And then you come into future adaptations and setting lines of tractions existing in panel of operation setting. Clocking your systems, lines of travel. Okay? Change, and there you go in set position. 2 lines of signals. Okay? In set tractions, right? But you're in the center that never leaves the center. So all you're creating is a portal, a travel, a dimension of space and time in 2 different directions in one. Okay. And then you come into the ground centers and set tractions. Okay. There's your star maker. This is a star screen. A travel. Okay. Look at that. Okay. Then you can change the setting, outside signal, and create it through its pyramid. So you're always working with 4 pyramids every single time. Every single time, guys. Okay, look at that, it disappeared. Okay, every single time. And it's all done from inside your eye. See, that's the crazy part. It's all inside the eye, which is more complicated for you to understand how to identify that, because you never leave the center operation of the eye itself. Okay. Oh, yeah. See how complicated it gets? Let's see how amazing it is and how you come in your position location, how you see the eyes, the windows of the soul. All right, so we change the schematics. We come into a new window frame of creating. So when you're adding things, you're creating. What you're seeing is already through creation. That's creating, right? This is creating because you already know what you're seeing. You're having an expectation and you have to get out of that, because if you don't, everything around you is going to disappear. It's about you already knowing what you're picking up the image that you already created through its imaginary skill sets that you understand how to use that and process all through communications, all in different angles. See? Right? So your eye is this now. Remember, the center eye is always like this, so it doesn't matter. It looks like it's like this. It's be like this. No, it's just you're doing this now in the mind, right? You're telling the mind to change it this way in traction, right? Doing this way, okay? You're telling the mind to go this way in traction. So now you're creating a sphere of a center operation of its earth, of its all operation line signals, location setting, all through traction. So you see in your eye in all directions, right? So your eye's spinning inside through a Fibonacci inset and travel in that communicate inside and outside all at once, inset travel communications, right? It's very powerful stuff, but never ever leave the center operation of your eye, the eye itself. That controls everything inside, that controls everything outside, inset track location of its generation system. Okay? Bring it back home in sequence, back in panel, back in operation. But that's the eye looking at all directions, right? Inside the eye itself. So, you know when it comes in that setting with there is no spoon? So if you're like this, right? You know, you have to understand your eye is always in the center. Your eye never changes. The only thing that changes is your intent or perception, how you see things. So your mind changes the perception of direction, of its angle. That's all it is, right? So you don't have to do this. Right? All you're doing is just changing the perspective, how you see everything. Because you're eye-lining your settings. Now to equalize the separation, you're crossing over and creating a platform, a hologram. So once you understand that, then you can connect with the consciousness, right? And that settings of travel, right? You can't connect with your phone, okay, until you understand the consciousness of its phone, where it is in its own demographics of its own system of travel. Okay, so you're here, okay, in set position. Okay, and you're picking up your phone. You're picking up your phone, but you can't. So what the phone does, it comes out of its operation sequence and scans your system of travel. Right? And you basically get sucked in its walls of communication. Right? And it brings you in. It sucks you in the phone because you got emotional interaction. Okay? And then it goes back in here. 3 centers. Now you're inside the phone. You can't get out. So there's so many ways of looking at this, guys, in perspective. And it doesn't matter how you see it in setting a travel. You're inside the phone now. So wherever the phone's going, you're going inside the phone, a travel communication. Okay? That's what gets you trapped inside the matrix of simulation. Okay? You understand now why it's so important what you're doing. So the more you see yourself in the mind, the more you see yourself, you're already in the simulation of everything of center operation of face recognition. Okay? That's all it is. That's you. Right? So understand that nothing can come in, nothing can penetrate because you're always putting a face facade, protecting everything in your system, right? But you're creating activities inside and outside in travel. Okay? And your face comes this way. There's another face. There's another face of you. There's another face of you and another face of you. All in set position, right? So nothing can penetrate your walls or anything attractions because you're constantly protecting yourself of everything you do through the high set location of the system, all the calculations. This is going to help you and understand how this all comes together, guys. That's what this is all about, traction, right? It's for you to identify yourself and to modify your system. Is to control levels at higher lines of space. Because I'm telling you, everything around you is going to disappear. And you have to control that by bringing it in. That's creating. Okay? Get out of the coexisting. Okay? You get your positions or levels that you're already existing. That doesn't override anything attractions. And that position. Okay? Because you're already existing everywhere anyway in positions of form. Form, formless. Shape, shapeless. Time, timeless. Motion, motionless. Sense, senseless. You've got to come into that now. because everything you see is already set up. And that's why it's so easy for you to understand these things. Oh, there's my bed. There's my door. There's my wall. There's my TV. There's my window. There's my car. There's my tree. There's my grounds. There's my road. There's people walking. You guys are going to go higher now. And everything around is going to disappear. That's creating now. You got to come into your creating because you already know what you did through creation. And the more you identify that, the more you come into the mind of empty space. Getting clear conscious of what you're doing, keeping yourself calm at all times, provisioning your cycles, travel in that communication setting, putting your demographics in your mapping system, what you already have in the image, you set it up. You set it up. So when you're here, you're setting up a wall. You set up another wall. But all this is empty. Nothing's there. Nothing's in frame. So get out of expectation of coexisting and come into levels of existing because it overrides everything you guys know in your system all through online communications of your settings of simulation. All right? That's it. I'll see you guys in 5.